Park Foundation has been with us for 3 of those years, and we are very, very grateful for that. We are going to be doing a lot of cool things, but anyone that's out there that would like to share on social media, you're going to find those social media tags here. Parks, you can also drop in your social media for your park and make sure we can tag those too. So we're going to be moving pretty quickly. I know that some of you are using this as a geography lesson today. So Miss Bell's class, I hope you have those pencils and maps and computers ready because we're going to get started. This is the beautiful faces that we are going to be seeing today. And we're going to go ahead and start with our first ranger. Before we do though, Leanne, if you can drop this survey into the chat window just in case people have to leave. We will put this in and out of the chat during our time here, but we want to know what you think of this, and we want you to send all the love to the park rangers. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with Rocky Mountain National Park. So this is Ranger Haley. Ranger Haley, we're going to let you go ahead and unmute, and Steve is going to pin you, and let's get started with Ranger Haley from Rocky Mountain National Park.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Ranger Haley and I am a park ranger at Rocky Mountain National Park, and I am so excited to talk about life in the winter here. All right, so Rocky Mountain National Park is a great place to experience winter. It's a winter wonderland. We have 8 months of winter here, and there are certain things that make winter so special and different than the other seasons, like tons of snow. Look at this video of our road crew clearing the snow off a Trowbridge Road. Snow at the tops of our mountains can reach up to 30 feet deep. And in lower elevations, we consistently have 5 feet of snow throughout the winter too. We also have lots of wind here in the winter. Winds can make it feel cold and can be up to 100 miles per hour at the tops of our mountains, and even 40 miles per hour in lower elevations. It's also very cold here in the winter, and temperatures can drop to -20 degrees Fahrenheit even at lower elevations. With all of these extreme conditions, you might wonder how animals, plants, and humans deal with winter here. Animals deal with winter in different ways. They either migrate, they either hibernate, or they tolerate the extreme winter conditions. So migrators, they move to different locations to avoid winter, like these two animals here, the mountain bluebird and the rufous hummingbird. These small creatures travel south towards Costa Rica, and that's close to 4,000 miles. Animals that hibernate do not like the winter and conserve more energy by avoiding it altogether. Marmots are the largest rodents in Rocky Mountain National Park. They are true hibernators and hibernate for 8 months out of the year. They eat a ton and build up fat to help them stay warm during hibernation. And believe it or not, their body temperatures fall to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and they only breathe 1 to 2 times per minute. Now, animals that deal with the harsh conditions of winter are called tolerators. These animals have special adaptations to help them survive. Like the coyote, it grows extra hair and covers itself with its tail when it gets cold. And the long-tailed weasel here changes color of its fur to blend in or camouflage with the snow. So this helps it hide when it's in search of its prey. Now, all 5 animals that we talked about today, they change their bodies or behaviors to help them survive the winter. However, animals also utilize the environment around them to help them too. And snow acts like a great insulator, kind of like a blanket. And the closer you are to the ground, the warmer that it is. And also the different layers of snow, as we can see here, help animals make tunnels and homes. Now, as funny as it would be to see a plant migrate, they cannot adapt to winter in the same ways that animals do. So instead, our aspen trees carry out photosynthesis in their bark, which actually helps them get more energy in the winter. And there's 2 other trees that tolerate the winter here in Rocky, and those are the subalpine fir and the Engelmann spruce. And these trees are narrow and cone-shaped, which allow the snow to be shed easily and not break their branches. And here's an example of some rangers demonstrating this concept for us today. Now, people also deal with winter here. However, visitors find ways to have fun here in the winter. There's still so much to do, like snowshoe or ski, or even sled here in Rocky Mountain National Park. So although winter can be harsh here in Rocky Mountain National Park, life continues. I love winter here, and as we continue the rest of the program, I want you to think about your favorite part of winter. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Haley. That looks like a great place to be in the winter, and we're excited to get back there this summer to visit you. So,
Me too.
Olympic National Park is going to be our next piece. But kids, while we're waiting for Ranger Dean, we're going to give him a couple seconds to get in here. Would you throw in the chat window what your favorite thing to do in the snow is? We're going to collect all of these answers and we'll put them into a word cloud for later. But classes, what is your favorite thing to do in the snow? Ranger Dean from Olympic National Park in Washington, we are so glad that you are here with us today, and it looks like you are sharing your screen.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ranger Dean, and I'm joining you from Olympic National Park in Washington State. This is a view of the Olympic Peninsula, home to Olympic National Park and the 8 Native American Indian tribes that have called this place home since time immemorial.
Ranger
On the
Dean,
peninsula.
can you
Yes.
check your screen again? Can you stop sharing and reshare because it's not showing us anything?
Okay, I'll try again. Is that working?
No, so do it one more time, but this time when you click share, make sure you're clicking on the picture on your screen that you want to share.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me stop sharing and try again. It says your share is loading.
Well, how about you talk about the park for a minute and then we hope that comes up.
All righty. So I'm at Olympic National Park in Washington State, home to 8 tribes since time immemorial: the Port Gamble Slalom, the Jamestown Slalom, the Lower Elwha Slalom, the Quinault, the Quileute, the Hoh, and the Port Gamble Skokomish are all on the peninsula, and they've been here since time immemorial and are partners with the park in managing our resources. Like Olympic National Park, we have lots of snow as well, but I wanted to talk about our rainforest valleys, which makes something very unique at Olympic National Park. We can get over 12 feet of rain a year in our rainforest valleys, over 140 inches of rain a year. And all of that rain creates these great big rivers that drain off of the mountains, off to the waters that surround the peninsula. And swimming up those rivers are our salmon. And our salmon, there are 5 types of salmon in Olympic National Park, and we're going to use our hand to think about the 5 types of salmon. For our thumb, that reminds us of the chum salmon, thumb chum. Our pointer finger, if you're not careful, you can sock someone's eye out, so sockeye. And then our tall finger is the king or the Chinook salmon. And then on our ring finger, oftentimes rings might be made out of silver, so that reminds us of our silver or our coho salmon. And then finally, our pinky finger reminds us of the pink salmon. I'm going to see if I can do this one more time. And it's...
There you go.
All right. So there's the peninsula. There's our snowy mountains. There's one of our snow blowers like you saw from Rocky Mountain. We also have lots of fun things to do, building snowmans, going skiing or snowboarding or sledding. And there is no place like Hoh for the holidays. So a lot of people associate holidays with gift giving. And that's what the salmon are. The salmon are a gift to our rainforest valleys that continue to give. Salmon start these 5 species of salmon, they're called anadromous fish. They start their life in the fresh water as eggs. They hatch out of their eggs as little fry that live in the fresh water, and then they turn as juveniles, they smolt and they go out to the ocean, and then they return as adults, and they can swim up the streams and the cascades far up into the mountains, and they return to the Hoh to a place called Taft Creek right around this time of the year. So if you were in the rainforest at this time of the year, you would be able to go to Taft Creek and you could see these salmon finishing their life journey, returning to the rivers and the streams where they were born to lay the eggs and start that process all over again. They are a gift. They are a gift to the animals that feed on them. Here are some river otters enjoying a nice salmon meal in Taft Creek. And when they finish their journey, it's the end of their life cycle, and so they die, but they start to decompose, and as they decompose, they start to return all of the nutrients that they consumed out in the ocean back into our ecosystem, into the rainforest ecosystem, and that nourishes our lush rainforest ecosystem. And so the gift has been recognized. It's an important part of those 8 tribes that live here on the peninsula, to their culture and to their lifeways. And they celebrate the arrival of the salmon with the first salmon ceremony, just like we celebrate the arrival of religious figures in some of our holiday ceremonies as well. So from Olympic National Park, thank you for visiting, and we wish you a happy holiday.
Thank you, Ranger Dean. And we love the thing with the hand and the salmon. So if you'll stop sharing your screen for me just for a minute. Kids, I want you to throw in a type of fish that you know about. So we know about the salmon and the 5 different types, but what is a fish that you know about? Drop that into the chat window as we welcome Ranger Cat from Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument. We are so glad you're here, Ranger Cat. This is year 2 for you. So take it away.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. This is Ranger Cat and Rosie saying hello. When I think about the holidays, I think about going home and seeing people I love. And Rosie and I, this Thanksgiving, we got to see my family. So we flew in a plane. So as I'm talking, I want you to think about some of the people that you might travel to see, or some of the people that might travel to see you, because I want to tell you a little bit about travel through reading parts of a children's book called Ruth and the Green Book by Calvin Alexander Ramsey. It was a big day at our house when Daddy drove up in our very own automobile, a 1952 Buick. It is the most beautiful color. Daddy calls it sea mist green. He bought it for his new job, but first, we planned to go on a trip to visit Grandma in Alabama. That's where I live. As we drove out of Chicago, it felt funny to see the neighborhood disappear, and then the streets, and then the buildings. I love all the green grass and hills and trees. Daddy told lots of stories about when he was a boy in Alabama. He made us laugh. After driving for a long time, we stopped at a service station to fill up on gas. As Daddy was paying the station attendant, Mama asked for the key to the restroom. The man said we couldn't use the restrooms because they were for whites only. Mama and I had to go into the woods. I was embarrassed, but Mama said the people who should be ashamed of themselves were those service station owners. I was tired when Daddy stopped the automobile. I asked Mama where we were, and she said we were going to spend the night in a real hotel. We watched Daddy talking to the man behind the desk. Daddy was smiling and pointing to us, but the man shook his head and turned his back. Daddy came back out and slammed the car door. He never slammed the door before, so I knew he was mad. So we kept on driving through the night. Mama took a turn so Daddy could sleep. I fell asleep. We must have pulled off the road in the middle of the night because when I woke up in the morning, we were all curled up in the car. I was stiff and hungry. Mama gave us cold biscuits and jam for breakfast. She said we should sing to cheer ourselves up. When we crossed into Tennessee, Daddy said his friend Eddie lived close by. He was sure we could sleep there. Eddie was so happy to see us. That night, I went to sleep to the sound of Daddy and Eddie playing music together. The next day, as we loaded the car, I heard Eddie talking quietly to Mama and Daddy. Eddie warned them about what was ahead, someone called Jim Crow. I heard Eddie tell them that however bad it was so far, it was only going to get worse. In the car, I asked Daddy who Jim Crow was, and he explained that Jim Crow wasn't a who. It was a bunch of ugly laws forbidding blacks and whites from mixing in any way. I asked, why don't they want our business? Wasn't our money just the same? It hurt my feelings to be so unwelcome, but Mama sighed and reminded me that my job that day was to look for an Esso station. I spotted an Esso station near the Georgia border and sang out to Daddy to stop. Daddy filled the car up and asked the man if he knew where we could sleep for the night. The man showed us a pamphlet called the Negro Motorist Green Book. He explained this book was started by a postman, Mr. Victor H. Green, to help Black people who were traveling. It lists places in lots of states where we would be welcome to sleep, eat, shop, get a haircut, and all kinds of other information besides. Right away, Daddy bought our very own copy for 75 cents. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time to read the rest of the book, but I will share that the family made it safe and sound. Here's a picture of the very end. And I also want to share that a site that's part of our national monument was a site that was listed in the Negro Motorist Green Book, and it's called the A.G. Gaston Hotel. So I hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season and someday stop by and visit us in Birmingham, Alabama. You might spot Rosie with me as well.
Thank you,
you.
Ranger Cat. We loved our visit there. Kids, I would love for you to drop into the chat window where you may be going for the holidays this year. So throw that in the chat window as we get ready to introduce Ranger Rachel from Mammoth Cave. So Ranger Rachel, we're going to spotlight you in just a moment, and we are excited you're here, and welcome to Holiday in the Parks.
Yes, thank you all so much for having me again this year. This is such a wonderful program. I'm excited to share with you all. So friends, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. I am going to share my screen with you and share you some wonderful pictures of Mammoth Cave here in Kentucky. Mammoth Cave is most known for being the longest cave in the world. We're going to see a few sites of our national park here. That's not what I wanted. There it is. Wonderful. Alrighty, friends. Winter at Mammoth Cave National Park. So pictured here is the historic entrance of Mammoth Cave. This is a natural entrance. Most of our tours go into this entrance. We can see some snow falling over the lip and even some icicles. Now, here in Kentucky, where Mammoth Cave is located, we don't always get a whole lot of snow. About as much as you see in the photo there is pretty much all we'll get for the whole year. But the park and the cave changes throughout the year as airflow changes in or out of the cave, and as many of our animals adapt to this winter weather, like our bats that either hibernate or sleep through the winter inside the cave or migrate and fly to warmer places. One of the best things to do at Mammoth Cave National Park in the wintertime is to hike on our hiking trails. You can easily see the terrain and the topography or the landscape as you hike, and even get to really beautiful areas like Pennock's Pocket, which is featured on the right side with the person standing underneath. It's a lot easier in the wintertime to get to some of these places on our hiking trails, and you don't have to worry quite as much about bugs like ticks and things like that. So it's a beautiful time of year to enjoy some of our surface scenery. Here are a couple of pictures of some of that scenery up close. Especially if you look at the icicles over on the right side of the screen, you can see that they almost look like cave formations, like stalactites. They're formed in a really similar way with that dripping water hanging over the ledge of a rock or off the ceiling of a cave. So very neat to see features that look similar in both the cave and on the surface and are formed in similar ways. One of my favorite things about visiting and working in Mammoth Cave National Park in the winter time is getting to view our frost flowers. What a frost flower is there are some plants that hold moisture in their stems pretty late into the season. So think some of the last plants and flowers to grow and bloom at the end of the summer and fall. Because there is still moisture in their stems, whenever we get our first freezes of the year, when the temperature falls below freezing, sometimes that moisture in the stem can burst out and create ribbons of ice. And that's what this little heart-shaped frost flower is, that ice that curled out and around from the stem of that plant. Sometimes when you're driving through the national park, along the roadsides in the morning, you can see these frost flowers. At first, it looks like it's tissue paper or something strewn across the ground, but it's these beautiful icicles in lots of different shapes. One of my favorite things to look forward to every fall and winter. Here is some of the scenery that we have in our national park in the fall, or rather in the winter. Again, we don't get too much snow where we're located here in Kentucky, but when we do, it certainly decorates our landscape with beautiful icicles, snow, and that pretty white blue color. Here is another example of one of our overlooks in the national park. I love the blue hue that you can see over across the valley there, and sometimes the snow glitters when it catches the sunlight. In the winter time, we remain open and people go and visit Mammoth Cave and go on cave tours because inside the cave, the temperature stays the same all the time. It is always about 55 degrees inside the cave. And so it makes a perfect setting for an annual event that we host called the Cave Sing. The Cave Sing is an event that we have hosted for over 40 years now, and it is always the first Sunday in December. So just about a week and a half ago, we had our Cave Sing event. This year, over 800 people came to the free event, came down inside of the cave and listened to holiday music. We had two different performers, including a choir and a barbershop quartet that performed some music for us in the beautiful scenery of the cave. And we even light a tree inside the cave to add to the mood. After our Cave Sing event, we also have a special appearance by the big guy in the red over there. So it's a very fun event that we look forward to every year to celebrate the winter season at Mammoth Cave, to enjoy the cave as kind of a warm place to go in the winter time and to bring people together. So that's some of our favorite sites and memories that we have here at Mammoth Cave every winter. Thank you all so much for sharing this with me, and we'll pass it on to our next ranger and presenter.
Thank you so much, Ranger Rachel. That was wonderful. If you will just click, there you go, stop sharing on your side. That will work perfectly for us. I want you to drop into the chat window what you think you would find in a cave near your area. So we want to make sure you don't go exploring caves unless they're open and they're manned by someone. But what would you find in your area? We're excited now to head down to the Everglades National Park with Ranger. Is it Yvette that's here with us today?
Nope, it is Ranger Denise, but still so
Ranger
excited.
Denise, we're excited to have you here. Yay!
Thank you so much. So thank you for having us. My name is Ranger Denise. I work here at Everglades National Park, and I've been hearing a whole lot about this winter that y'all are having. with snow and lots of cold temperatures. Well, I'm here to bring some warmth to us all today. We are looking at the mid 70s, upper 80s a little bit later this week, and I am currently standing inside the waters of Everglades National Park. So being here in the winter is truly an extraordinary time. In the summertime, it can be pretty unpleasant with high temperatures and lots of bugs, but let me tell you, friends, this is the time to come and enjoy Everglades. When you come down to Everglades National Park, you might notice that we don't have snow. We don't have those fall leaves that y'all have up north that are absolutely gorgeous. In fact, you'll find that we have 2 seasons here in Everglades National Park. Thank you so much, Ranger Mariana. We have the wet season that you see on your left. That's going to be during our summer months. And now we are experiencing the dry season that you're seeing over to your right-hand side. Many more pleasant temperatures, the bugs drop in numbers, and you can also see some pretty incredible things. So this habitat that I'm standing in right now is one of the best habitats to find some of those critters that you just saw on your screen. Ranger Mariana, can you show us those awesome photos? Here in Everglades National Park, we are blessed to have not only temperate species, but also subtropical species living side by side. What does that mean? Well, that means you'll find the Florida panther living pretty close to the subtropical American crocodile. You can also find the West Indian manatee, maybe if you're lucky, the endangered snail kite, the reddish egret. We also have other reptiles like, of course, the alligator, the indigo snake. We have a roseate spoonbill, the great blue herons. If y'all are wondering where your birds went, if you're living a little bit up north, well, they migrated down here, down to South Florida. So if you really want to get a chance to see some of these animals in their migration, in their native habitat, this is the time to come. Now, how do you enjoy this amazing place? Well, you can enjoy it in a variety of different ways. If you're feeling a little bit more, well, cautious, I understand, you can simply drive your car down the roads and see some of these habitats shift from the higher elevation. I know some of you may laugh when you hear elevation in Florida. We're talking 11 feet above sea level, or lower elevation like 3, sometimes even at sea level. You can drive through the Everglades and see these amazing habitats, but I truly believe that in order to really understand and get the most that you can out of this national park, well, you gotta walk a little bit closer into this amazing habitat. Now, this crazy thing that you're seeing that I'm doing well, you can do it as well. We do lead ranger walks where we welcome children, we welcome adults to come out with us and walk into the sawgrass prairie that you see around me. We can also walk into a cypress dome and see the amazing epiphytes, the air plants, the orchids, the owls that are living in these amazing cypress domes. Look at this incredible tour that you're seeing with little ones and big ones mixed all around. Pretty much, I have to say, no matter what you enjoy out here in Everglades, you're in for a really nice treat during our dry season, or as we know it in our, the bigger world, our winter season. But thankfully, it's not too cold here. Otherwise, you would not catch me walking in this water right now. But another way that you can really enjoy and explore the waters of South Florida in the Florida Everglades are going to be by getting on the water. One of my favorite ways to explore the Everglades is by kayak, canoe, or even a vessel. You can paddle through the majestic mangroves and see the cute mangrove crabs. And if you look very carefully under that water, you can find millions and thousands of little fishes starting off their life in the mangrove estuary. Over on the top right, you can sail over the glassy waters of Florida Bay and the 10,000 islands. Maybe if you're very lucky, you might see that lower bottom left photo with the white pelicans that have migrated down south, and even some bottlenose dolphins. But no matter where you go in the Everglades, my friends, I want to encourage you to find some amazing things. And I want to address the elephant, or shall I say, the alligator in the room. When people see rangers doing this kooky thing that Ranger Denise is doing here, the biggest question that I always get is, where's the alligator? Ranger Denise, aren't you worried about that alligator? Well, I'm here to tell you very briefly, these alligators are amazing animals and have a natural fear of people. So when we are in these areas, we're actually very careful and always safety conscious about how we are interacting with wildlife, and to make sure that interaction is always respectful. So we do have American alligators, we do have venomous snakes, we do have these amazing animals that call this place home, but we are always very careful and vigilant around these animals. This area that I'm in right now, I've scattered it out before I got in here. We made sure there's no alligators, but like I said, whether you're in a car, walking through the area, paddling in a kayak, going through these areas, and oh my gosh, maybe you'll be lucky to see an alligator hole like the one you see here. Regardless of how you explore the Everglades, there's no wrong way to explore it. I want to encourage you to come and have a great time, but also stop by one of those park ranger stations and tell us what your favorite part was. I really appreciate y'all giving us this window to talk, and oh my gosh, I could talk forever, but I'll throw it back to our narrator. Thank you so much for having us, and hope to see you in the Everglades soon.
Thank you so much, Ranger Denise. We are excited, and we've seen those alligators. I'm going to ask the kids in their journals right now, would you sketch out an alligator? And your trivia question is, how many teeth does an adult alligator have? So go ahead and sketch that out, draw the teeth in there, maybe do a little research, and then throw your answer inside to the chat window as we kick it off and throw it over to one of the first national parks I ever visited as a child, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park with Ranger Sid. So Ranger Sid, we're excited to have you. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ranger Sid coming from Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I'm on the Tennessee side, but this park is so big it stretches all the way over to North Carolina. And I'm a little bit jealous of Ranger Denise and those nice warm temperatures further down south. But right now, the tops of our mountains in the park look a little bit like this. Now, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is the most biodiverse national park in the whole country, which means we have the most number of unique species living within our park. Now, in the wintertime, a lot of those animals can kind of slow down, but when we're lucky enough to get a fresh dusting of snow, it's a lot easier to see which animals have been around by the tracks they leave in the snow. So I'm gonna play a little game here with you guys. I'm gonna show you the tracks of an animal in the snow with a few clues. And in your classes, try and guess what those animals are. Okay. So very first, if you look closely at this animal's tracks, you will see 5 long nails and 5 big toes. This animal can walk across logs and is a really amazing tree climber. During the wintertime, there's not as much food for this animal, so they will go to sleep for a long time. And another hint is that it has big black fur. If you guessed that the animal was a black bear, you would be right. By far the most famous animal here in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And since it doesn't get too cold all winter, these bears don't actually hibernate through the entirety of the winter. They'll kind of wake up and go outside to try and find food if the weather's nice enough. Okay, next. These footprints look almost like our human handprints. They're a bit smaller. Now, you might sometimes find these tracks outside of your own house near your garbage cans, but don't mistake this animal for a bandit, even though it is wearing a mask on its face. If you guessed that that animal was a raccoon, you would be right. Take a look at those very human-like hands that they've got on their front paws. All right, next up, these are smaller footprints, kind of in the same a similar shape as those raccoons. Do they look like they were made by a dog? This animal hunts for a lot of different small mammals, including mice. If you can find this animal, the reddish-brown fur will stick out against the snow. And often stories and fables will say that this animal is tricky and clever. And of course, the animal we're thinking about here is the adorable red fox. Moving on, this footprint looks a bit different than the other ones I've shown. This animal has hooves instead of paws. And these footprints look like little hearts in the snow. And though this animal is really big, sometimes it's hard to see because its brown fur camouflages it so well in the forest. So this animal is going to be the white-tailed deer. We have quite a few of these guys hanging around in the park, especially in the wintertime. It's lovely to see them. Okay, This is the biggest bird that we have in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The brown and black feathers of this bird help it blend in with the earthy colors of the forest. Though most people associate this bird with Thanksgiving, they still hang out all winter here, and they build their nests on the ground and make a cozy spot among the bushes. And they have some extra skin on their neck that they call a wattle, and it can be very colorful. This animal is, of course, the turkey. This one's all puffed up and showing off in this picture. Okay, next one. This one looks a lot like the footprints of the deer, but they're a bit bigger. Their fur is a little bit thicker and shaggier. And my favorite thing about this animal is the sound they make, called a bugle. It almost sounds like the sound of twisting metal to me. And their antlers can grow huge, and they wear them like a crown. And this animal is the incredible elk that we have here in the park. Look at those huge antlers. And we have this other one, looks almost like cat footprints, most active during the nighttime, and they're a great hunter. If you look closely at this animal, you'll see spots and stripes on the coats. You'll also notice that you don't see the nail or the claw part of the foot on the snow, and that is because the bobcat can retract their claws, so they're not always out when they're walking. Okay, and one of my favorites here, this is a furry creature that is one of our river habitants. They love splashing and playing in the water, and their fur is super soft and waterproof. Sometimes in the snow, you might see a slick trail on the riverbank, and that might be how they're getting into the water. If you guessed that this animal is a river otter, you would be correct. All right, I had a great time going through some of our amazing winter animals with you all today, and I hope you have a happy holidays wherever you are celebrating.
Ranger Sid, thank you so much. We love the Smokies. Well, we're going to keep going west if that's okay with you. I want kids to drop into the chat window now their favorite animal from the Great Smoky Mountains, but hang on tight because we are heading up to Nebraska and we're going to be talking to Niobrara National Scenic River with Ranger Bobby. Ranger Bobby, take it away.
Hi everybody, I am Bobby Rochon and I am the Park Ranger Interpreter for Niobrara National Scenic River, and that is a winter on the prairie out here. And is my screen sharing correctly to all y'all?
Yes.
You guys see my slideshow? Okay.
Yes.
So we are going to be going a prairie river winter. So I am in the middle of north central Nebraska, which is almost South Dakota. So we are pretty far north up here and we get a lot of snow and ice, but right now our river isn't quite the winter wonderland just yet because we're getting a little bit of a warm snap. So it looks a little bit more like this photo right here. And we have a lot of cool critters to call our river home, and those are the eagles that are flying through there right now. This river is a scenic river. We were designated in 1991, and it's kind of cool here in the winter because during the summer, it's a great river for people to come float. It's a great river for beginners, but during the winter, it changes. And we get a lot of snow and ice, and the river actually forms up ice jams on it. And those jams can get pretty intense. In fact, they can block the entire river. Now, do you think the water quits running during this time? Throw it in the chat if you think it stops running or not. Do you think the river still flows? You getting any answers? I got one. No, it keeps running year round. So even though there's a layer of ice on the top of it, there's still water moving underneath that's staying a little bit warmer than the air temperature is. Throughout the winter, it will shift and break open. So you'll have a solid ice jam and then it'll start to crack and move, especially in like later in the spring, we'll start to see those moving. And that can lead to some interesting floods downriver. In these photos, you can see how high the ice jam can get. You can see in that top left photo, the very top of it, there is actually a dam there. And that's actually the dam powerhouse. And the ice is all the way to the top of that dam. So it's about 20 feet above what it normally is. Usually the water is pretty down low. And you can see in that second photo how much it changes when the ice starts to break up. The bottom photo here is where we were taking the photo from of the dam, and that's how high the ice was there too. It gets pretty intense, like I said, here in the winter in Nebraska. We are also home to over 200 waterfalls. Most people don't think of waterfalls in Nebraska very often. We actually have the tallest waterfall in Nebraska. Does anybody want to take a guess at how tall it is? Do we think maybe 60 feet, 55 feet? Any other guesses? 100 feet? 279? I like that number. I wish it was. This waterfall is Smith Falls and it is only 67 feet tall. And it will actually freeze. It won't freeze completely over because our waterfalls have this really cool patina that kind of protects them. So they won't freeze all the way over. And we have different waterfalls than everybody else because ours are convex instead of concave. So they stick out like a nose. People still float the river in the wintertime. Do you think you should probably be wearing a life jacket and some nice winter clothes for that? Maybe a dry suit? I think so too. Kind of like the bison. They are dressed for the winter. We don't usually dress for the winter if we're going out on the river. We need to be dressing warmer. We have prairie dogs, and then my favorite, the river otters. They like to play in the ice jams too. It's kind of a neat little place, and it's a great place to go wandering in the wintertime. Just make sure you're dressed appropriately. And I want to thank you all for joining me in Nebraska.
Thank you so much, Ranger Bobby. We love being up in Niobrara, and we've only done it once in the wintertime, and it is pretty cold up there. Well, guys, shake off your snow. Everyone shake your hands in the air. Get the snow out of your hair. Do this because we are flying now all the way over to Hawaii Volcano. So Hawaii Volcanoes, aloha, Ranger Jody.
Aloha kakahiaka, which means good morning in Hawaiian. I am here at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and I'm going to turn my camera around so that you can see where I'm standing. I am on the top of Kilauea Volcano, which is one of the world's most active volcanoes. It is not currently erupting. I'm just going to zoom in here on the crater. There is, however, a lake of lava down there in the crater. There's a surface of dried lava, and underneath that, there is still hot lava, as you can see by the steam that's rising out and the sulfur gases that are there. And then if I pan over a bit, you can also see Mauna Loa, which is much bigger than Kilauea. Kilauea is 4,000 feet high. Mauna Loa is over 13,000 feet high. So this entire background here is Mauna Loa. Temperature in Hawaii this morning is about 62. It's a cold morning because it is just around 7:40 a.m. here. And speaking of weather and seasons, I am going to share my screen and we're going to learn a little bit about the seasons in Hawaii. So I will find the right spot. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. So in Hawaii, we basically have two seasons, summer and winter. And the winter season is also known as the wet season because we do get a lot of rain, especially on one side of the island. So this is a typical misty morning that you see here in the rainforest of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And why do we get a lot of rain? Well, our islands are made up of volcanoes, and the volcanoes have this rain effect that affects islands and also mountains, volcanoes. And so when warm air blows across the ocean and then rises up the sides of the volcano, it cools and condenses into a cloud. It rains on one side, and then by the time it makes it to the other side, it's dried out and it's not going to rain as much on that side. So you can see in this picture here, this is part of the island of Hawaii where I am, and this volcano right here is called Kohala. You can see very clearly the wet side versus the dry side. But we don't mind the rain that much because it leads to rainbows. And the nickname of Hawaii is actually the Rainbow State. There are rainbows on our license plates, and they're very beautiful. Whoops, I didn't mean to change that yet. Do you think, this is a question for all of you, could there be snow in Hawaii? And if you said yes, you are correct. Some of our volcanoes are tall enough, like Mauna Loa, that we do get snow on the tops of them in the wintertime. So in the background here of this picture, this is Mauna Loa, which we were just looking at live a couple seconds ago. And then the inset here is Mauna Kea, which is also a volcano that's over 13,000 feet. And that one up there has astronomical observatories on the top. People will actually go up there and they will go sledding and snowboarding, and they might even drive a pickup truck up there, fill it with snow, drive back down to their grassy lawn and build a snowman and enjoy it until it melts. That right there is my neighbor with a snowman from a couple of years ago. Now, the season of winter in Hawaii is also known as Makahiki season. In Hawaii, people traditionally use the moon calendar to keep track of time, and Makahiki season roughly runs from October through February. It lasts for 4 moon cycles. The moon tonight in Hawaii is known as Muku, which is a new moon, and that means that's the end of one of the lunar cycles. And Makahiki season honors the god Lono, and the time is a time for peace. It's a time for celebration and also for preparing for battle. So there are games that are played during Makahiki season. There are endurance games, strength games, and also hand-eye coordination games. So I'm going to turn myself around. I've got one more thing to show you here. And this is called a pala'ie, which is made completely out of parts of a coconut tree. And it's a hoop and ball game, but rather than just try to land the ball in the hoop here, the idea is that I'm going to do it in slow-mo for you because I'm still learning. You're going to have it on one side, and then you're going to try to get it to go all the way around in a circle, hit the other side, and then back and forth as many times as you can, like a paddle, so that you're really getting ready for battle during the summer season. So Mele Kalikimaka, that's happy holidays to all of you from Hawaii. And I hope you have a great season, and maybe I'll see you here sometime.
Mahalo, Ranger Jody. Thank you so much. So mahalo is thank you. So kids, if you can throw a thank you into the chat window for Ranger Jody, and if you want to use the word mahalo, you can. I do have to say something really quick as we get ready to head over to Sleeping Bear Dunes. We only give the Rangers 4 minutes, and this is horribly hard for them because they love to talk. But I'm so proud of all of them for sticking to our schedule. You are amazing, and your gift is in the mail. You'll get it in 2026. The mail is slow here. So now let's head over to Sleeping Bear Dunes with Ranger Dave. Ranger Dave, not aloha, but hello.
Aloha. Thank you. So happy to be with you all today. Like she just said, I'm calling in from Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, and I'm here to talk to you about a very specific animal that you can find in our park. We do have a pretty good winter up in northern Michigan here, and we have one frog in particular that I'd like to talk about, and we'll get into wood frogs in a little bit. But before I do, I'll show you where exactly we are, a little more of a map here. Right in the middle is Lake Michigan in the middle of this photo. Here's the lower peninsula of Michigan. And we are right here on what we call the pinky of Michigan. Here in Michigan, we like to hold up our hand, point to where we're from. We're up in the pinky of the lower peninsula there. Some other great national parks in our vicinity. And we get a pretty good winter here in northern Michigan. About 120 inches of snow annually. That's an average. Things are trending down. It's a whole nother presentation, but we are experiencing drier winters these days, it appears. But here is a photo of one of our campgrounds in the amphitheaters, really chock full of snow. And even when there's not enough snow, or not that much snow, we got a fair amount of ice here. It's very cold with the wind coming off of Lake Michigan there. Pretty severe winters, generally. From like October to April, you could have snow on the ground here. And that poses a unique challenge, just like it does at all of our parks, for our cold-blooded friends. Our warm-blooded mammals and our bird species have different strategies for dealing with the special challenges that winter brings. But I want to focus in a little bit on this, what we call the cold-blooded conundrums, sort of the challenge, the problem facing our cold-blooded animals in the park. And cold-blooded, more accurately, would be known as ectothermic. So we are endothermic, make our heat inside and control our body temperature that way. Means we have to eat more food. There's a trade-off there. Ectotherms, things like frogs and reptiles and other amphibians, have to rely on that outside temperature to maintain their temperature. That's why they'll bask in the sun. They don't move very quickly when it's cool out in the morning. But when it looks like this outside, here's Otter Creek beside me there, and it's frozen over, they'd be pretty cold indeed, right? They can't create their own heat the same way we do. So what happens then? If you can take a moment to think about, I'm sure some of you have left a water bottle or a soda in the freezer before. What happens when that liquid freezes? Pretty unique property of water. Unlike some other substances, when the water freezes, it expands, right? Which would break open a soda can or a water bottle in your freezer. Think about what that might do to your body cells inside an animal, say in your organs or throughout your body. All those cells also have water inside of them, and if they freeze, it's going to be bad news for that organism. There's a reason that we haven't figured out cryogenesis and being able to freeze people and then thaw them out later and have them survive. Freezing generally means you're going to die for our animals. How about frogs, though? Where generally frogs, where do you think they could go? How could they deal with this? Some birds migrate away. Mammals got their fur and they stay active, finding food in the wintertime. Where could the frogs possibly go? Well, there's only so many places, right? They could go under the water. That's where some frog species go. Excuse me. And it's a little bit of a misconception. People think that they bury themselves in the mud like a turtle would, but frogs can't do that. They need to stay in areas where there's more oxygen. So they can't totally submerge in the mud. They're going to generally be sitting just kind of at the bottom of a lake. And underneath this frozen ice, that's another great property of the water, right? When it freezes and expands, it floats. So there's liquid water year-round on these lakes. So that's what some frogs can do. But remember, we're dealing with a wood frog here. They're going to be in the woods, like their name suggests. Maybe they could go underground, and some toad species do that. We'll find a burrow of another animal, or we'll otherwise dig under there to get below the frozen layer. But wood frogs don't even do that. They like to live in forests like this hemlock forest here, and they won't dig a burrow. Amazingly, you can find them just hanging out in the leaf litter under the snow. And here is a photo of a wood frog, only 2 to 3 inches long, these guys. Their range goes all the way up to the Arctic Circle. You can see here in Michigan, they're totally covered in the range of the wood frogs. And what they do, there's a little bit more physics behind this, but very basically, they let the spaces in between cells, these are a couple of cells here with their lipid bilayers, the water ice will form in here to a degree. About 2/3 of the body actually freezes in this way. Whereas in the meantime, it pumps glucose, which is a kind of a sugar in our blood, into the cells and prevents the water from getting pulled out, because that's really what causes the damage. If it freezes in here, it's going to pull the water out by osmosis. So they balance that out by pumping it full of glucose. It's still a bit of a mystery how exactly they do this, but there's some science behind that process now, and we're starting to understand. So their heartbeat can actually practically stop. And when it thaws back out, they have an advantage. And that's, and I'm running out of time here. I'll wrap up by just saying, what's an advantage to this whole strategy? They get an early start. As soon as the snow melts and there's those vernal pools, even when there's ice still around, they can start to feed and breed, lay eggs, and they get that jump start over everybody else. There's almost no predators around, certainly in the water. When they're in those pools, there's no fish in those melting snow pools in the forest. And it means if they have a late freeze in the spring, they can just go back into their little hibernation and come right back out just fine. So to wrap up, if you like what you see, look us up on our website, mps.gov/slbe, or you can go to the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration. We have some of our programs on there as well. So thank you very much, and happy holidays from Sleeping Bear Dunes.
Thank you so much, Ranger Dave. We always love to hear from you because you're extremely smart with the sciences, and we love that. So let's head on up to Acadia National Park with Ranger Lisa. Ranger Lisa, welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's great to see all of you here today. If you can see my map of the United States, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Awesome. So again, my name is Lisa from Acadia National Park, and I put a big yellow star here on the state of Maine, and that's where Acadia is located, right there along the coast with over 4 million visitors a year. Now, here's a picture of the landscape in Acadia, broken up into how it might look in the different seasons. So as these seasons pop up, you can say them along with me. We've got spring, and of course, summer, and fall, and winter. Now, check out this view of Acadia by boat. Most of Acadia National Park is on island land. Can you see the mountains out there? I want you to go ahead and reach your hands above your heads and stretch them out. Imagine you're making the shape of those mountains that you see. Pretty amazing. Now, I've got a question for you all. I wonder, when do you feel like you are on top of the world? Think about that for a moment. Maybe it's when you have a feeling of joy, or perhaps when you're really proud of accomplishing something. You know, being on a top of a mountain can certainly give us this feeling too. Acadia protects 26 mountains. Now, this is a view from Cadillac Mountain, the tallest mountain not only in Acadia, but also along the East Coast. Now, it's pretty cold here in the winter, and along the coast, we don't get as much snow as inland Maine, but when we do, it's quite beautiful. All right, now we're gonna head to the sea. Everybody take your arm and make some waves, like the ocean waves. Stretch out your ocean waves, and let's check out what it's like down by the shore. So Acadia is located right next to the Atlantic Ocean, and over 60 miles of coastline are protected here. Join me, let's head down there to that one sand beach. You can put your arms out like a bird and flap your wings because we're coming in for a landing. Now, sometimes in the winter, you're going to find snow or ice in the area, and other times just the fleeting designs left behind by the waves. There are lots and lots of different types of shorelines here, and some of them have really sensational seaside cliffs. The dynamic shores of Acadia are truly full of life. Now, Acadia preserves also beautiful long lakes, part of the glacially sculpted U-shaped valleys. These U-shaped valleys kind of look like smiles. So I want to ask you, what made you smile today? Go ahead and take your hand, give a wave, and draw a smiley face in the air in front of you. And think about what made you smile today. Those valleys are the lower elevation areas between the mountains. Lakes and ponds can ice over in the winter, sometimes providing opportunities for ice fishing and ice skating, depending on those weather patterns. Now, lots of types of forests are protected here in Acadia. Go ahead and take your arms and imagine you're the branches of a tree and reach them up really high. You can stand up if you need to and do a big stretch. Imagine you're a tree growing up. And I wonder, what is one of your favorite types of trees? It seems like everywhere you turn in Acadia, there's another breathtaking view of a forested landscape. After the deciduous trees lose their leaves in the fall, the forests are still colored green by the foliage of the evergreen conifers or the cone-bearing trees. Visitors can head out in the park to take a walk or a hike, or even cross-country ski and snowshoe too. Now, you never know when you might find some of those tracks out in the snow. So we'll do a little review of being a track detective. Help me out here. Do you remember, are these tracks from 1, a red fox, 2, a white-tailed deer, or 3, a porcupine? Make your vote. Hold up a 1, 2, or 3. What do you think? This one is number number 2. Way to go. Okay, I've got one more for you. Do you think these tracks are from number 1, a wild turkey, number 2, a porcupine, or number 3, the snowshoe hare? Let's see that guess out there. Hold up that number high. Way to go. It's from the snowshoe hare. Their huge, furry hind feet help them move efficiently over the deep snow. Well, way to go, everybody. You all did an amazing job, and I wish you all a happy holidays from Acadia National Park. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ranger Lisa. We always enjoy hearing from you. So kids, let me just remind you that this, or teachers, this is being recorded. So if you have to step out, we will have it ready for you. If we keep to our 4 minutes, which everybody is doing so well, we'll end at 2 o'clock Eastern time, but we're flying now over to Santa Monica Mountains with Ranger Mary. So Ranger Mary, we are ready to go.
Buenos dias and hello everyone. Welcome to the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. I'm broadcasting to you live from Rancho Sierra Vista, Satwiwa, one of the many beautiful locations we have here. And I'm so glad that you're able to join us during a common winter day for us here at the Santa Monica Mountains in Southern California. When I came in this morning, it was a cool 49 degrees and we're already at over 60 degrees. And when you come out to visit us, which I hope you do, you'll find that the winters for us are not as cold as most places. As a Mediterranean ecosystem, we're considered to be more of a moderate climate. Normally, we do tend to get winter rain, but as you can see today, it's nice and sunny. We are also considered a biologic hotspot, and that is true for us here in the winter. One activity, because we are a recreation area, that people like to do is participate in our winter bird counts. And sometimes we've counted up to 380 bird species. And right now behind me, I'm at a seasonal pond. And I'm actually seeing, unfortunately, it's hard to get on my camera, but we just had a large group of white-crowned sparrows that have just landed, and they're enjoying the beginning of what is going to be a nice winter visit for us. Then we also have some mallards, which are a type of duck that have just landed, and I hadn't seen them here earlier, so they may have just arrived today. Another fine representation of our Mediterranean ecosystem is actually right here in the view, where you can see a variety of vegetation, which is right now actually green and lush because of the fact that we do get our winter rains. So we do have plants that do go dormant in the wintertime, but what you're seeing right now is right here closest to me is a pond area. And if we follow that out in the background, you can see our savanna grasslands, which those are going to start to kind of die out. And so you're seeing that's kind of that yellow hue. If you continue out farther at the bottom of our mountain range here, we have our chaparral plant community, which stays green year round. And then at the very tops, which are hard to see, we have our coastal sage scrubs. And then if you were to jump over the mountain with me, you would end up at the ocean and you would have a beautiful view of the Pacific Ocean. And you'd even see our neighboring national park, the Channel Islands. We are a recreation area, as I mentioned, and so this is a place where if you come in the winter, you don't have to just bundle up and stay cozy at home. You can come out, you can hike, you can bike, you can explore our recreation area, or you can just enjoy how the winter seasons change out here. So on that note, thank you all so much for joining me out here in the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. I hope if you find yourself in Southern California that you'll stop on by and go on a hike with us.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Ranger Mary. Kids, I want you to drop into the chat window now some flowers or trees that you find in your area as we fly back across the country to Big Cypress with Ranger Andrew and Ranger Jay. Guys, I bet you're hanging out in a swamp. Ranger Jay and Ranger Andrew?
There we are. Hi, everybody. I'm Ranger Jay in Big Cypress National Preserve. And you are?
And I'm Ranger Andrew.
And we're standing knee deep in a swamp. And it's probably not the swamp that you think about when you, like maybe you think about Shrek, right? When you think about Shrek, what do you think about a swamp?
Really stinky and gross and dirty.
Yeah, but it's a lot different than that. Show them what the water looks like here.
Sure. So our water here in Big Cypress National Preserve is crystal clear. We can see right through it. There's Ranger Jay.
So it's pretty amazing. Where does this water come from?
All of our water in Big Cypress comes from rain. The rain percolates through the watershed. The different habitats filter it out.
Yeah. And do you know how much rain we get every year?
We get quite a bit.
We almost 60 inches, 5 feet of rain, mostly from hurricanes. And like our friendly park on the other side of the country out there in Hawaii, we have a wet and dry season too. And we're in dry season now, even though we're in the water. But today's a little different, isn't it?
It is a little different today.
We've had a cold front come through. It's dropped the temperatures down. We were only 50 degrees this morning for here. That's cold weather. And we've got our jackets on. Usually we're out here with sweat on our brow about how hot it is. Behind us, we can see the trunk of a cypress tree. You want to tell them about cypress trees?
Sure. So cypress trees are the main vegetation type here in the cypress swamp. They're really tall and they have a rough bark, which allows other plants to attach to the outside, like these little tiny air plants, which you might be able to see on your screen. It's a cousin of a pineapple, so it looks similar to the top of a pineapple. And also at the bottom of a cypress tree, you can notice it has a very wide base. That's called the buttress, and that wide base keeps that tree stable during large storms like hurricanes that we get down here in Southwest Florida.
Now, what other plants do we have here?
We've got some great ferns. We've got strangler figs. There's tons of lichen and algae that likes to jump to the side of these cypress trees. What else do you see, Jay?
You know, we can't see it on the camera, but just over here, there's a swamp maple. I think that was a pretty unusual tree for me to see when I first came down here. Big Cypress is home to lots and lots of animals. And we noticed quite a few on our walk in today, didn't we?
Sure. Yeah, there's all sorts of wading birds in the area. They love to come down here for the winter where there's tons of food for them to eat.
Yeah. And do you remember the little yellow bird we saw over here?
Yeah, the pine warbler. It's big. Yeah, beautiful bird.
And we saw this big, huge flock. Must have been 200 or 300
tree swallows
flying overhead, spinning around, eating mosquitoes. Well, we really like that.
Yeah. How many mosquitoes are there in the swamp here, Jay?
We have 42 varieties of mosquitoes here in Southwest Florida. That's a lot of mosquitoes.
But in the swamp, are you getting eaten alive?
No, you know, most days we don't wear bug spray when we're out during the day. Right at sunset, the mosquitoes are really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But during the day, not so much. We have a lot of those natural controls like the tree swallow. And we've got fish swimming around our feet here right now. Those are called...
They're mosquito fish or gambrusia.
Yep. So just a great place out here. And we encourage people here in Big Cypress and go explore, because so much of this landscape is wet. We don't have regular trails here.
You mean we can walk in the water, Jay?
We can walk in the water, and we do it every day, don't we?
We sure do.
We take sixth graders out with us, and Dr. Drizzle has been out with us too. So it's quite a unique environment here in Southwest Florida. I was thinking of one other thing, and then I forgot what it was. We've talked about the birds, the plants. Oh yeah, there's that one big reptile that lives down here.
We have those around here?
That great big lizard?
I think I know what you're talking about, Ranger Jay.
What is it?
Are you talking about the alligators?
Yeah, we have alligators here. Alligators, they look like big lizards, but they're adapted to the water. And we always watch when we first come in because we can see them if they're hanging out in the area. And people are afraid of them, but as with any big animal, if you give them their room, there's nothing to worry about.
And how do those alligators adapt to the dry season, Ranger Jay?
Well, they find the low spot in a pond and they kind of scoop out more mud until finally they have a little bowl type shape. It's called an alligator hole. And that helps not only the alligator survive that dry season, but it also helps all the other animals that need water too. So I think that we've got our time in. So Dr. Drizzle from Big Cypress Swamp, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And we hope to see you down here again.
Thank you so much. We missed being down there. Now we're heading to a park now that does have a water connection, not a swamp. but we're heading to Abraham Lincoln birthplace with Ranger Noel. So Ranger Noel, we are so glad to have you. I don't imagine you're standing in a swamp today, but tell us where you are.
No, we're not standing in a swamp today. So I'm Ranger Noel and I'm here with Ranger Lauren.
Hi.
And we're going to take you on an adventure here at the Abraham Lincoln birthplace. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. And if you could give me a thumbs up when you can see it. Can you see it, Dacia?
Yes, yes.
Alrighty, folks. Well, welcome to Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historical Park here in Hodgenville, Kentucky. This is the site, obviously, where Abraham Lincoln was born and spent the first few years of his childhood. Here we have Knob Creek. This is where he spent those first few years after they moved from Sinking Spring Farm.
What do you think it would have been like living on Knob Creek, Lauren?
I don't know. It would have been very different than it is today. Just look at that landscape.
Yeah, down in a basin. Maybe it would have been kind of wet.
Yeah. Right here, what you're seeing is a log cabin. This was a typical style cabin that they would have had at the time. And just imagine Abraham Lincoln, his mother, father, and his older sister living in this one-room cabin.
All those people in one little cabin?
I know, it's crazy to think about, but that was very common at the time in the 1800s.
Now, I like to think about all the chores they would have had to do, even in the wintertime, even on those snowy, cold days, they would have had a ton of work to do. Here in the picture, you can see a living historian depicting Nancy going ahead and starting her chores, going down to the river to get water. So that's the Knob Creek, where the water flows next to where the Lincoln family would have lived. That would have been a lot of work hauling water.
It really would have been a lot of work. And not just parents did chores. Young kids would have done those as well.
You think Abraham Lincoln would have hauled water as a little kid?
It's very likely he would have. It would have been a very easy chore for this and their children to do.
And not only just hauling water, they have to grow all the food they need to survive the winter as well. And then they have to cook that food over an open fire.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot of work. But, you know, I bet it would have been worth it. They could have had some tasty meals.
Oh, yeah. It would have been so yummy.
You know, I wonder what you would like to eat for breakfast if you were going to eat on the frontier. Now, you have to remember that you have to be able to hunt and grow whatever you're eating. So it would have to be something you could hunt or grow. So think about wherever you live. What are things that you could hunt or grow and make a meal out of? And what would you eat? And could you drop those down in the comments, what you'd like your meal to be?
There's so many good options that you can pick from.
What do you think you'd have, Ranger Lauren?
I don't know. Maybe because we grew corn, maybe we can ground that down, make it like some cornmeal, or make it into grits and have maybe some dried fruit on top.
I think I'd look forward to that small portion of the year where you got to eat bacon.
Oh, yeah, I can't do bacon.
I do really like bacon and maybe some eggs from the chickens you would have had on the farm.
Isn't that just a beautiful landscape with that cabin and the fields behind?
Yeah, you know, it is really pretty to look at, but I'm glad we don't have to live on the frontier. I'm glad we get to spend a lot of time inside the visitor center where it's nice and warm.
Wouldn't that be great? Our visitors sure do enjoy coming to visit us and hang out in the nice warm visitor center and get to appreciate what it would have been like with the Lincolns would have lived here too.
You know, not only do the visitors get to go into the visitor center, they get to do a little bit of hiking as well, and they can explore the landscape. Here we have a couple of photos of what it looks like here in the wintertime with everything covered in snow.
Yeah, and thankfully, we are able to go nice and safely as we walk through these areas.
Yeah, lots of trails to explore and check out some of the animals that are using their adaptations to survive the winter.
Exactly. Here we have the memorial building. This is the first Lincoln Memorial. This was built and finished in 1911. This is actually built 11 years prior to the one in Washington, D.C. And that's in the general area where we think maybe the cabin stood when Abraham Lincoln was born.
Yeah, that's one of the features that visitors love to come here and see is that first Lincoln Memorial. And then they get to go and take a look on the inside as well.
Wow, really? What's inside?
The symbolic cabin, Ranger Lauren. That's where we have a cabin that represents the one that Abraham Lincoln would have been born in.
Yeah, and it's very similar to that one you saw before at Knob Creek, but this one is in that general area where we think it stood when he was born.
That's pretty neat to know that Abraham Lincoln was born in a log cabin and he got to be president one day. It makes me feel like I can be anything.
I know, it's a really different sort of experience to think about how he would have lived and what he became.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And if you have any questions for us, we'd love to answer those for you down in the comments. And I'd love to see what kind of food you all said you would have. Let's see. Corn, tomatoes, oatmeal, biscuits, grits, bacon, venison. Oh, I had venison for dinner last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. Oh, bread, eggs, more bacon. I think people like the bacon, Lauren.
Of course people do.
Thank
Yeah,
you
if you have
so
any
much.
questions,
Yeah, thank
we
you
would
so
love to
much.
answer those in the comments.
Thank you so much, Noelle and Lauren. If you'll just hang in there, they may drop some questions for you in just a few minutes. But we love being with Lincoln. And now we're going to go to another A park. Starts with an A, but we're going to head down to southern Texas to Amistad National Recreation Area with Ranger Jennifer. Ranger Jennifer, we're glad you're with us today.
Hi, everybody. I hope you all are staying warm. And I am trying to get my little computer to play nice with me here. Are you seeing my screen or not yet?
Not yet.
All right. Here we go. And now you're seeing it?
We see Abraham Lincoln.
Yep. Okay, good. We're at the right starting point then. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to take you all for a drive, and we are going to travel 1,214 miles southwest from where you just were at Abraham Lincoln. And you're going to head over to Amistad National Recreation Area. And here we go. So we're over in Del Rio, Texas. And Amistad is Spanish, and it means friendship. And it really represents the cooperation between the United States and Mexico that happens out in this area. We're, as I mentioned, far southwest Texas, and we're right on the international border. In fact, the Rio Grande, which is Spanish for big river, forms this international boundary and also forms one of the boundaries of my park. The Rio Grande was dammed off right here to create an international water reservoir. And that dam is about 6 miles long, and the water it holds has changed our atmosphere. Amistad National Recreation Area is in a very arid area, but the reservoir adds quite a bit of humidity to our air. And on top of the dam are two big bronze eagles, the Mexico eagle and the USA eagle, on their respective sides of the international border. Oop. Got the eagles, there we go. As you can see from this picture, one of our trails here has plants all along it. In fact, all of our trails have various plants, but this one in particular shows some that are adapted to that normally dry environment. Can you see the big flat leaves, actually called pads, of the prickly pear cactus? These waxy pads help store moisture for the plant. And the spines themselves can help protect the plant from animals that try to eat them to get that stored moisture. Our average high temperature for December is normally 64 degrees Fahrenheit, and the low is usually 41. But as you can see here, our forecasted high for this week is going to be a bit warmer than that. And our low is actually quite a bit warmer too. Because it's so hot in the summer, often around 100 degrees, we see more people coming out to recreate in the winters. And camping is really popular this time of year. And boating is also popular, but sometimes the wind can get pretty cold when you're out on the water. But that doesn't stop the fishing tournaments that are really popular here too. And just fishing with the family on boats or on land can be really popular. So I want to invite all of our northern friends to come on down south like the birds and visit us here this winter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranger Jennifer. And kids, I want you to see if you know any other national park sites that have cactus in them, just like Ranger Jennifer shared with Amistad. So drop that into the chat window. If you can stop sharing that, there you go. And we are going to head on up to the top of the country. We're going to head to Yellowstone with Ranger Michael. Ranger Michael, thanks for waiting with us. Take it away.
All right, I've enjoyed visiting all these other parks where it's so warm. Yellowstone was 18 degrees this morning when this program started, so I've enjoyed traveling around. So I'm talking to you from the world's first national park, place where they invented national parks. They saw this beautiful land. Sorry, I'm sharing the wrong page there. Okay. That's not the page I was sharing. So let's see. So sorry, there we go. So Yellowstone is in the Rocky Mountains, so it's winter here for about half the year. So we have all snow everywhere. It's usually over our heads, but we still have some warm places where we have a volcano underground at Yellowstone. So there's hot water coming out from underground. So I want to just show you some random scenes from around the park. We do have a lot of animals here because it's a wild place. So we have all these kind of animals. We have carnivores and herbivores enjoying the park. It's because of all the snow here, it's a great place to go cross-country skiing. We have so many beautiful trails where you can go skiing and see all the activity, the beauty of the park. Sometimes you're lucky enough to see one of the predators pouncing on their prey, like these foxes or coyotes. They can hear a mouse under the snow and then pounce down in, or an otter might dive into the water to catch a fish. The most famous thing about Yellowstone is our geysers. We have 500 geysers. A geyser is when hot water underground under pressure is forced up into a hot water fountain that can shoot anywhere from a few feet to a few hundred feet into the air. And our geysers keep erupting all year long, so you can see them all the time. And a lot of our hoofed animals appreciate the geysers and the hot springs because they melt the snow. Our snow gets really deep here, but near the hot springs, the snow melts and the animals can have an easier time finding the grass. They got to be careful. The water's pretty hot. They can get burned. But if they enjoy the land near the hot spring, they can find grass more easily. Because of our hot springs that go into our rivers and lakes, not all of our rivers and lakes freeze over in the winter. And so thousands of swans, trumpeter swans, come here from Canada to spend the winter in this place where the water doesn't freeze. In any time of year, you can see the Canada geese around Yellowstone. Some migrate or some stay all year. We get snow over our heads. The snow's usually 5 or 6 feet deep here. So we get this lot of snow. So you got to be careful because we sometimes can have an avalanche if you get too close to the edge. But the snow is really beautiful and really scenic. We have birds. Some birds stay here all year, like the ones on the right side of this picture, the Clark's nutcracker and the mountain chickadee. They stay here all year. You can see them pretty active in the winter. The ones on the left are the state birds of the 3 states that Yellowstone is part of. The western meadowlark is the state bird of Wyoming and Montana, and the mountain bluebird is the state bird of Idaho. And you can see both of those birds in the park, but they do migrate, so you're more likely to see them in the spring or the summer, but they do often come back before all the snow is melted. Similarly, you're not going to see bears too often in the winter because they're sleeping, they're hibernating, but once in a while you'll see that a bear has gotten up and walked around. You'll see its giant tracks on the snow, and they often wake up before all the snow is melted in the spring. We have 2 kinds of grouse that you might see, the ruffed grouse and the dusky grouse. A grouse is a chicken-like bird that lives in the forest, and they're active in the winter, and they sometimes burrow into the snow to keep warm. And any time of year, Yellowstone is a good time to see our national bird, the bald eagle. So all these random scenes that I've shared with you of Yellowstone, I've compiled into a holiday song. And if you'd like to join me in singing a winter song about Yellowstone, please do. On the 12th day of winter, Yellowstone gave to me 12 species feeding, 11 people skiing, 10 furs a-leaping, 9 geysers dancing, 8 bison steaming, 7 swans a-swimming, 6 geese a-laying, 5 snowball rings, 4 calling birds, 3 bears not in dens, 2 kinds of grouse, and a bald eagle in a pine tree. Thanks for sharing Yellowstone in winter with us, and y'all have a happy holiday and get outside and enjoy winter wherever you are. And I know my counting was off on some of those pictures. Thanks very much.
Ranger Michael, you always impress. We love that. Kids, while we're going to the next park, would you put in the name of a bison that you would name? If you could name one of the bison for Ranger Michael, what would your name be? Throw it in the chat window and we'll see if he can come up with some names. Now we're going to be heading over to Black Canyon of the Gunnison with Ranger Christie. Ranger Christie, take it away.
Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. Welcome to Black Canyon of the Gunnison. My name is Ranger Christie. I am so excited to share with you all today what makes Black Canyon special to enjoy in the winter time. Whoopsies, went too fast there. So I am coming to you all today from Colorado, just a little further to the west than Ranger Healy was joining us from earlier today. I am just outside of Montrose, Colorado. So you would get to Black Canyon of the Gunnison and you would see this amazing sight. So Black Canyon isn't the steepest, the deepest, or the most narrow canyon, but it does have a combination of all three of those characteristics. So right here, I'm standing at the Painted Wall, which is the highest cliff in the state of Colorado. So overall, Black Canyon spans about 48 miles and it's 2,700 feet at its deepest point. The rocks that make up this rock wall here are over almost 2 billion years old. So they're almost half the age of the Earth itself. So the canyon is gorgeous and really fun to get a chance to explore from up in the rim. So winter is a really special time to come to Black Canyon of the Gunnison. As snow starts to build up on the canyon rims, the park is transformed from this kind of summery view into a winter wonderland. So quite a bit changes at Black Canyon in the wintertime. We get a lot of snow, not quite as much snow as Yellowstone, but we do get about 10 feet of snow that falls on the ground here throughout the course of the winter. December and February will be our snowiest months with about 2 feet of snow on the ground, although this year we're a little bit behind. It gets pretty cold at Black Canyon as well. You know, we're looking at in the teens and the 20s during the daytimes right now, with it getting below freezing at nighttime. Our coldest temperature ever recorded was in the -20s about 13 years ago. But all that snow and all that cold, it doesn't stop us because we get to explore the park in new ways that we can't in the summertime. So places that were once roads in the summer turn into trails, and then our normal summer trails are just nice and snowy. So we need to have different stuff on our feet to be able to explore these places. So one of the ways that we can explore the park in the wintertime is actually by using these things called snowshoes. So snowshoes make the size of our foot bigger, and they allow us to float a lot better on top of the snow than we would without them. The good news is that if you can walk, you can snowshoe. So snowshoeing, really, we don't move our feet very much differently than we do normally, maybe just a little bit wider set apart. So if you're in the classroom and you want to practice that, just imagine having these big things on your feet and your legs spread a little bit wider apart than you normally would. So once you've practiced your technique on sort of flat ground, then it's time to take it over to the deep snow and see how much harder it is to try to float on the deep snow. This is one of our friends last winter who was using snowshoes to stay on top of over 3 feet of snow. So they really do help us out a lot. But snowshoes aren't the only way. If you've mastered your snowshoeing skills and you want to try out cross-country skiing, you can strap some cross-country skis on your feet to explore those trails. The South Rim Drive is one of those roads that turns into a trail in the wintertime. And when we get enough snow, rangers will actually groom the road and make these nice ski tracks for you to go skiing. So skiing is quite a bit of a different motion than our snowshoeing would be, where you actually are gliding across the surface of snow. So you can practice that motion as well if you want to in the classroom. So if you're lucky, you might even get to be the first person out on the South Rim Drive or the ski trail in the wintertime and ski across tracks of animals that have been there since the last snow. And you can practice all of your amazing tracking skills that we've learned so much about throughout our time together today. So Black Canyon is a really special place to explore in the wintertime because things that were once roads in the summer become trails, and we have to explore them in a little bit of a different way. And I think most notably, this could be you, where you get this amazing overlook all to yourself as you peer into the gorgeous Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. I hope to see you all out there sometime. Don't let the snow and the cold scare you from exploring your national parks this holiday season.
Thank you so much. How exciting. We're ready to come there pretty soon.
Excellent.
All right, kids, we have 5 more parks. There we go. We have 5 more parks to go. We're going to go now to Washita Battlefield with Ranger Kate. Ranger Kate, thank you for being here. It's your first time. Let's learn about Washita Battlefield.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ranger Kate. I work at, actually, it's called Washita Battlefield. Washita is the Hollywood pronunciation of my wonderful park. We are a very small park located in western Oklahoma. And I'll share my screen so you can see it. Let's see. So Washita Battlefield National Historic Site is in Cheyenne, Oklahoma, which is the western part of Oklahoma. We're in the southern plains of the United States. And we are a park that talks about and protects the site of the Battle of the Washita, which was the attack of the 7th Cavalry on a Cheyenne village on November 27th, 1868. So we are a winter park because that's when it happened. And our weather here in western Oklahoma tends to be a little bit snowy, a little bit icy, but always windy. We are western Oklahoma. It's hair dryer weather in the summer and pretty darn cold in the winter. Our temperatures range in the 40s. Sometimes it'll jump all the way up to the 60s, and then sometimes it'll drop all the way down to the 20 or the mid-teens. But if we do get snow or ice like we do here in our photos or along the Washita River like you see there, it lasts a day or two and then our temperatures shoot back up and it is no longer that way and it's just kind of brown. But we are grateful for the little bit of snow and ice that we do get in the winter because it kind of gets a little bit dry here. Winter was a major part of the Battle of the Washita. When the 7th Cavalry was making its way towards the Washita River, they were traveling through blizzard conditions, about 1.5 feet of snow, 18 inches. That's a lot of snow. And so you can imagine walking through that on horseback with just a uniform. Oh man, that sounds cold to me. And the night before the attack, Black Kettle, who was the chief of the village, had a council meeting and he was deciding whether or not to move the village because of the reports of being soldiers in the area. Well, they decided to stay one more night because of those cold, wintry temperatures and that cold snow. So if they had actually moved the village that night, who knows? We might be telling a very different story. But tribes often camped along the Washita River in the wintertime. It was a common winter camp because there was some shelter from the winter weather. But they played a lot of winter games. Everybody plays games. It's fun. It's the wintertime. So in the winter, they would play these games. And when the ice would melt in the spring, all of those toys and games from the winter would be thrown into the water because you don't play with those games in the summertime. You'd grow hairs on your body and you'd have to pull them out. And that sounds pretty painful to me. So I don't think I'd want to do that either. The first game that they played is this one in the front. It's called Over the Shoulder Game. It is a game that boys would play, and it is a wooden ring. You stand with your heels to the back and you jump out and you have to throw over your shoulder those wooden colored sticks. The boy who had the most inside that hoop was the winner. The next game they played was called Whipping Tops. And you can see they have these wooden tops. They'd wrap a whip around them and throw them across the ice and see whose would spin the longest or the longest distance, the furthest distance. Either one, whoever was the winning top was the winner. The next one we're going to talk about is a great one that everybody still does, even back then, sledding. Although they didn't have plastic sleds, they would have used something a little bit different. What you see on your screen are 2 different kinds of sled. The wooden toboggan was made out of wooden slats that were split, and oftentimes the women and the girls would ride that kind of sled. The other kind of sled that you see there is made of bison ribs. Can you imagine riding down the hill on a bison rib sled And apparently, it's as fast as a running horse. I don't know if I believe that one, but who do I know? The next game we're going to talk about is a game that men would play. It's called the sliding bone game. And you can see there he has something that he's thrown across the ice. And this is what it is. It is another bison rib bone that they would cut into a point in the front. That curve would make it just slide right across the ice, and those feathers would help it glide. So the point of the sliding bone game was to get that bone to ricochet and slide the furthest down the ice you could. Our next game is a girls' game. It's called football. Looks a little bit different than the football that we play. And they would form, two teams would form a tight circle. Girls would take turns bouncing the ball or tapping the ball on the top of their foot. And each time they did it successfully, they would get another point. The first team to 300 points was the winner. But if you dropped the ball, so kind of like hacky sack, or if you juggle in soccer, the other team would have a chance to rack up the points. So you had to try and be the one that had the most. And this is the kind of ball that they would play with. It's a leather ball filled with antelope hair or bison hair, and oftentimes they would beat it. And the last game we're going to talk about today, I think, is really cool. And it's kind of like bowling, but on ice bowling. So what the girls would do is they were two teams. They'd sit about 10 feet across from each other, and they would have about 20 counters and about 10 inch round pebbles. And they would use these pebbles to try and hit the sticks of the other team. The first one to a set amount of points before the game was started was the winner. And oftentimes in these games, they would trade beads, beadwork, weapons, toys back and forth between each other. So some of the games that they played are similar to the ones we play today. Some of them are a little bit different, but they sure all sound like fun to me. So I hope you have a great holiday. Maybe some of these games you'll play with on your team and your family and your houses. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranger Kate. And I will remember that it's Washita now. I will try to practice that. Kids, I want you to drop in the chat window what games you like to play with your family and friends as we head over to San Antonio Missions with Ranger Ariana, I think. Yes, Ranger Ariana, take it away.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be learning here today. My name is Ranger Ariana, and I am a pretty new park ranger. Just this year, though, I've gotten to travel a lot, not just work at San Antonio Missions National Historical Park, but earlier this year I was at Haleakala National Park in Hawaii. And then just a few months ago, I was over in Lakewood, so in Colorado. So that was also pretty neat. But here today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this park, something special that's going on today, if we're going to talk about the park. But if we want to check the weather, I noticed that we've been doing a weather call. It's okay. It is 68 degrees right now. It's going to be 70s for the highs, 40s for the low, and that's typical. I've lived in Texas my whole life, so us just talking about snow makes me feel so cold. So if it's snowing in San Antonio or Houston, where I grew up, something's gone wrong. We normally have very humid summers, pretty dry winters, dry summers for sure, unfortunately. But this week it looks like we have 60% chance of rain this week. So having rain is really important, but also navigating through how do we work through a really unpredictable precipitation is also something that is what San Antonio is about. So I'd like to share with y'all this little PowerPoint that I have together. Let me go ahead and do that. All right. So we're going to celebrate about winter and holidays in the parks at this particular park. It's living for me. And do y'all see it as well? We're going to celebrate with San Antonio Missions National Historic Park, learning about what's going on over here. So there I am, yet again, Ranger Ariana. And I want to have some bilingualization because that's a little bit of what San Antonio is about. But the introduction about what is this park, the history of connecting the land and the water, La Inmaculada, who will go into Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the Tradición, what is still celebrated literally today. So San Antonio Missions National Historical Park is made up of these 4 out of the 5 missions in San Antonio. And it is pretty peculiar to have so many missions all close together. If we have anyone who's been to the missions out in New Mexico or California, they're spaced out a little bit more. These missions are only 2 to 3 miles apart. But I work at Missions Concepcion, San Jose, San Juan, and Espada. And there happens to be one more mission, if you can remember that one more mission in San Antonio. If you remember the Alamo, perhaps, that would be that 5th mission. And that's run by the state of Texas because they really focus on the Battle of the Alamo in Texas. But we're going to even scoot the story back before we call this place Texas or the United States or even Mexico. When this place was known as New Spain, as Spain is colonizing the space and calling it what it is. But we'll even talk even before that. So we're going to talk about quite a few hundred years in a short amount of time. But these 4 missions that I work at that make up the National Historical Park, plus the Alamo, make up something called UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I even like how just UNESCO defines it. So, a World Heritage Site is a natural or significant site that demonstrates influence or significance in a global context. So, pretty much creating an outstanding universal value that's not just special to San Antonio culture, but what can we learn from it worldwide? So, it's really cool that we get visitors from all around the world to learn about what's going on here and what's the history here. A little bit more about San Antonio is that's a very Spanish name, and people have existed here for thousands of years before Spain arrived. So we're thinking before 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but also before the early 1700s, when these San Antonio missions are set up. San Antonio would not be what it is without the river. The San Antonio River was known as the Yanaguana, which is a spirit or refreshing waters in the Payaya language. There are so many different family bands in the area. I can't just say one tribal group, but the Payayas, the Soliames, the Pastillas, Pampoas, dozens of family bands that all lived in the area that really utilize the San Antonio River. If you look at these missions now, the connection between the people and the land and the water, everything sort of has a reason. I don't know if my cursor is going to go over these, but what I'm drawing these blue arrows to on this San Antonio River map are where the missions are located. And that's very intentional alongside the river because when Texas is pretty unpredictable in its rain, and for years that are drought, if you're trying to create a community that you're going to need water for, maybe having the river nearby is going to be the game changer. So these missions are kind of on a checkerboard pattern on the left or right of the river as they start creating farm fields for the first time and using San Antonio in a really creative way. But today, 12/12, December 12th, it's really cool. I like it because it's like a dozen out of a dozen. It is a very special day for the Catholic faith. So just also stating, the 4 missions that I work at, by the way, although it's a national historical park, the churches that are on site, even if I just go back to that photo collage of them, these missions have these churches. That's me. These 4 missions have churches that are still active parishes to this day. The churches have mass and funerals and weddings and baptisms that are run by the Archdiocese of San Antonio. So it's a really unique partnership because in colonial Spanish Spain, there was no separation of church and state, but in today's time, we do have that. So we tell the story in 2 different ways. But something that's going on at the park right now is going back to Our Lady of Guadalupe. The story is from December 12th, 1531. So way before the missions were built. I don't know if any of y'all are out there that are 492 years old that remember that back in the olden day, but today is that feast day. So there's a whole story around it that's more than I can even go over right now. But it's stating that there's a peasant that was approached by what is a vision of the Virgin Mary in the New World. And so they have a lot of celebration for that. They have a prayer, they have a feast, but there's also this really cool dance that goes on, kind of like a parade. These are known as matachines. So this is a tradition that still lasts to this day. This photo was taken day before yesterday. So typically it would happen on the 12th, which is today, but I know people have jobs and have to go to school. So they kind of boot it back to the weekend to celebrate that they have this procession or parade, this kind of festivity that goes on to each of the churches. So that right there is Mission Concepcion, and a lot of people that are there in very colorful attire just talking about this. Even if I dissect matachines, it even comes from European history, if you believe it or not, mixed with indigenous colors and dances and music. So you're going to hear drums and you're going to hear bells and you're going to see these really colorful outfits, all to celebrate the Virgin Guadalupe. And so I even put her image on this slide because some of you might be really familiar with her, some not so much. I see her kind of everywhere in San Antonio, whether she's on a t-shirt or a candle, or I've seen earrings. Most recently, I saw her as a decal on the back of a Camaro. So she is still well loved and well revered almost 500 years later. So this particular mission, by the way, just fun facts about it, Mission Concepcion, its long fancy name is Misión Nuestra Señora de la Purísima Concepción de Acuña. So it's actually kind of funny that we're celebrating the Virgin Guadalupe at a church that is about the Virgin Mary. So translated to English, it's Mission of Our Lady of Immaculate Conception. The Acuña part of Acuña is the governor that finances and okays some of these missions to happen. But for that first part, they're really celebrating this character, this figure, this really important person in their faith. So even to this day, going back to the global aspect of things, that went a little too far ahead. Places all over the world still celebrate it as of today. These are some more pictures just from this weekend of Mission Concepcion and Mission San Jose. These really colorful, really ornate, over-the-top designs to really describe the celebration that's going on. And so my takeaway with y'all, of course, is let me know if you have questions, reach out to me, but the people, the land, the water, culture, families, community are all still being celebrated this winter season, but acknowledged every day at San Antonio Mission's National Historical Park. Because we can absolutely talk about the natural aspects, we can talk about the physical aspects of the churches and what stones they used, but all of this makes a really living history because the people didn't go poof once this was no longer New Spain or Mexico or the Republic of Texas, that the people still tell their stories to this day, and they're still here going to church, celebrating events. Back in October, we were celebrating Dia de los Muertos. And in the spring, we celebrate History and Genealogy Day and invite the families to come out and celebrate with us. So this season, we just happen to be having this special event happening right now today. If you have any questions for me, please do let me know. But thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being with us, especially for being sort of a new ranger. So we have 3 parks left that we're going to try to get done before our Zoom cuts off on us. We're really excited about these 3 parks. So please stay on and listen. Our first one we're going to is Fort Laramie. We were just there a couple months ago. So Ranger Clayton, take it away in Fort Laramie.
Hello, students and teachers and classrooms all across the country. I'm Ranger Clayton, or sometimes Sergeant Hanson, here at Fort Laramie on the Laramie River. And we are going from sunny San Antonio to snowy Wyoming. Welcome to the day room. It's a little bit of an odd angle, but I'm going to be taking you all up to a special place here at Fort Laramie. So Fort Laramie preserves a place which was a crossroads of many nations, not only indigenous nations, but also the nations that served in the U.S. Army in the 1800s, in the 19th century, where you might have heard many different languages, and because people were far from home when they could be here. They could be from places like Ireland. So how many of you kids, does anyone speak Gaelic out there? If you do, that would be awesome. Or maybe they're from Germany, or from France, or from Denmark, like my ancestors, or perhaps they came from Sweden, or Spain, or Italy, or even Mexico, or South America. So you might have heard Spanish spoken here as well, all mixed together in this polyglot, which is a big word that means basically lots of languages, world of Fort Laramie. But because it's so far from home for pretty much everybody, you're going to have to imagine what it might have been like. And I'm going to take you up to where the soldiers spent Christmas here at Fort Laramie in 1878 and tell you a little story. We're going to go outside of the day room, and I'll show you the snowy landscape. Here, we're not quite as cold as Yellowstone. We're about 2,000 feet lower than them, but it did snow this morning, about 3 inches, which was pretty typical here in the Laramie River and the Platte River Valley of southeastern Wyoming. And we'll go up and learn about decorating for Christmas. All right, everyone ready? I hope so. All right. have some warm drinks with you. Coffee or tea, whatever you need. All right, let's head outside. Oops. I'll hold that better. All right, let's head outside, everybody. So from the warmth of the day room out to and I'm gonna be able to see behind me the cold and snow of eastern Wyoming. But don't worry, the building here, the barracks, has walls that are almost 2 feet thick. So I was nice and warm inside the day room, which is kind of the place where it's kind of like your cafeteria or your rec room at your school. It's a place where soldiers could relax, have a good time, talk with each other, but also they had a place called a squad room, which is basically where their beds were, where they slept. But they could also spend time up there as well. And so let's head upstairs. So 34 degrees out here and about, 65 indoors. Pretty great. That's enough to get my my cheeks a little bit red. All right. So I want you all to imagine if you are out here at Fort Laramie in 1878, far from home, maybe a soldier, maybe a laundress, maybe married to a soldier, and you don't have a lot with you because everything you own has to be carried in one little box here. Box like, this. So if you had a box that size, do you think you could have Christmas decorations? What do you think? Yes or no? No, yeah, probably you didn't have a lot. Maybe you had some socks, some underwear, something really important to you, a really important book, maybe a little bit of money. But you might want to find a way to decorate a Christmas tree because they did have Christmas trees back then. Yeah, no room for ribbons or jingle bells, absolutely. So if you couldn't take a lot with you, what could you make as a decoration? What could you use as decorations for your Christmas tree? Is there anything you could use in your classroom right now that you just have? Well, soldiers were creative folks and they weren't in a classroom. Oops. Oh, pine cones outside. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, soldiers could be pretty creative folks. Well, paper chains. Yep, they were popular. But some of you made them in class. Popcorn. Oh, yeah, people loved to eat popcorn back then, too. It was a great snack, a favorite. But what they did here is something called the Fort Laramie cigar tree, because soldiers, even though, we know today tobacco can cause lots of problems with your lungs, but that was something that they liked to smoke. The smell of it is kind of pleasant, honestly, at least cigar smoke or pipe smoke. So they had a lot of them. And so in 1878, we're up in Company K's quarters of the 2nd Cavalry. They were the only quarters which were illuminated, quoting a description written by an officer here. And I must say that they presented a fine appearance, but few evergreens, the little tree behind me here, were seen. The only one being in the band quarters, which was where we are, which is where the company band would have been sleeping. But the tree was 9 inches high. Ours is a little bit taller. And when placed on a bunk and was decorated with old cigar stumps. So I want you to imagine Christmas here at Fort Laramie in 1878, the smell of tobacco, coffee, beans, wood smoke, and more, and the call of many languages: English, Gaelic, German, French, Danish, Swedish, Czech, Polish, Italian, Spanish, and more here on the banks of Laramie. Thank you for coming to Fort Laramie. I want to give the other last two some time and looking forward to seeing you here in Wyoming.
Thank you so much, Ranger Clayton. Kids, I want you to drop into the chat window what would be your favorite type of ornament to put on a tree that you could only find outside. So that's your thing there. We have 2 more parks and we're so excited to have them. Our next part is Keweenaw National Historical Park up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So welcome, Lynette.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. Just like Ranger Dave was telling us earlier, the state of Michigan, I have to hide this to make it work. Okay, the state of Michigan is shaped like a mitten. So at the top of the mitten is a bridge, and it connects the lower part of Michigan to the state's Upper Peninsula. Lake Superior runs along the northern side of the Upper Peninsula, and into its waters sticks a thumb of land, the Keweenaw Peninsula. The Keweenaw is also called Copper Country. People have mined copper here for thousands of years. Starting around 150 years ago, people moved here from other countries for jobs mining copper. Working and living in these mining towns can be challenging, especially in winter. Winters in the Keweenaw are long, snowy, and cold. It usually snows for the first time around Halloween, and it tends to stick around until April. An average of 14 to 18 feet of snow falls every winter. The temperatures are below freezing most of the time, usually between 0 and 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So, how do kids who call the Keweenaw home make it through the long snowy winters? They do what kids have been doing here since before the mining era. They have fun. After all of the leaves fall off the trees, many kids here get antsy for the first snow. When the snow falls, they can't wait to throw on their snow gear and head outside to play. We've talked about a lot of different ways that people could have fun in the snow today, from snowshoeing and skiing to hockey and ice skating. Here we are back on some cross-country skis, but there's also downhill skiing. And many of these activities have been practiced here in the Keweenaw Peninsula by immigrants from around the world, including countries like Finland, Sweden, and Norway, where they were used to a lot of snow and brought their technologies and traditions with them. We also have dog sledding, which goes back to our early mail carrier routes. Some kids in the Copper Country also attend all kinds of different winter celebrations. So the sled dog races that are still happening started out oftentimes with kids having their own sled dogs or their dogs at home pulling their sleighs. But there's a lot of other celebrations here in the winter with so much snow. Many people immigrated here from Finland during the mining era, and Hakenpäivä is celebrated by their descendants and the community to keep Finnish winter traditions alive. Outside, kids watch the parade and participate in kick sled races and ride the sled go round. Inside, they try Finnish foods like nisu bread, oven pancakes, and fruit tarts. Kids also have lots of fun as they listen and dance to Finnish music. This little guy is really a treat, but there's also a group called the Kiviyat Dancers who perform locally. Another celebration is Michigan Technological University's Winter Carnival. One highlight for families is walking through campus to see snow sculptures built by the university students. They've been building these sculptures during Winter Carnival since the 1930s. Gathering to play outside on the snow and ice are Copper Country traditions that bring the community together to enjoy winter. These traditions help winters feel shorter and remind kids in the Keweenaw that they aren't so different from the kids who lived here many years ago. Hopefully one day you'll be able to visit the Copper Country and Keweenaw National Historical Park to join in the winter fun and to help us keep the winter traditions alive.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting, and I love the videos that you had. Thank you for hanging in with us. Speaking of hanging in with us, Ranger Matt is now going to be with us from Delaware Water Gap. We are so excited, Ranger Matt, that you're finishing out this great day with us. So take it away, Ranger Matt.
Thank you very much. Can you see me?
I can see you.
All right. Very, very, very good. Well, greetings from northeastern Pennsylvania. My name is Ranger Matt, and I work at the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area. It's a very large park, and I want to tell you all about it. So let me just share my screen here. Okay. Let me just... Okay, so the Delaware Water Gap. A lot of people think that that is in Delaware. Well, it's not. It's in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. The Delaware River flows through the park, and that's why it gets its name. Like I said, we are located on the space between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Pennsylvania is on the left side there in the pink, and New Jersey is on the right. And the park is the big green thing in the middle. It is very close to some of the most densely populated areas in the United States, namely the metropolitan areas of New York and Philadelphia. There are also some smaller cities in the area like Scranton and Allentown, and all of those cities are just a few hours away. So we are close to a lot of people, and a lot of people like to visit the park. It is the 14th most visited National Park Service unit in all of the whole system. It is a large park. It is about 70,000 acres, over 100 miles of trails, 40 miles of the Delaware River flow through it, and the Appalachian Trail runs through it as well, 27 miles of it. So the park is very long. There are some beautiful features, lots of amazing things in it. And at the bottom of it is where the park actually gets its name, the Delaware Water Gap itself. And I circled it right there. There's an area there called Kittatinny Point. And this picture was taken from Kittatinny Point, which is on the New Jersey side of the park. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a mountain, and that is Mount Tammany. That's in New Jersey. And then on the right side, there's another mountain called Mount Mincy, and that's in Pennsylvania. They are quite steep. They go up over 1,000 feet from the bottom of where they start, which is at the Delaware River. And at this time of year, the river can get filled with ice. And the gap itself is the space between the mountains. Millions of years ago, the Delaware River eroded the mountain through a weak area in the mountain ridge, and now there's a big gap between the two mountains, and that's the Delaware Water Gap. One of the main things that people like to do in the park now in 2023 is hiking at every time of the year, whether it be in all 4 seasons. Lots of beautiful things to see in the winter. And one of those things are the waterfalls. We have several very large waterfalls in this park. And one of them is Dingman's Falls, which is actually the second tallest waterfall in Pennsylvania. It's about 130 feet tall. There it is in all its glory. And just a little bit up north of there is the tallest waterfall in Pennsylvania, which is Raymondskill Falls, which is about 150 feet. So why do we have so many waterfalls here? Well, we are at the edge of the Pocono Mountains, or the Pocono Plateau. And there is a very steep, essentially cliff that comes down from the edge of the plateau to the river valley. And that is called the escarpment. And a lot of the waterfalls come off that very steep cliff. And that's why we have these wonderful waterfalls. And one of the great things about all these waterfalls is in the winter is that they create amazing ice formations. There are lots of things interacting with each other in the area around the waterfall, whether it be the water flowing over the cliffs, the spray coming off the cliffs, the water flowing through the cracks of the rocks, the sun heating things up and then going down at night and things getting colder. All of these things are interacting to make some really interesting and beautiful ice formations. If you see on the left there are some icicles, but they're very unusual icicles because they're coming out of cracks in the bedrock, and they also have lots of cold spray coming off the waterfalls. So they look like, they look like white mountain lion tails, and I think that's pretty awesome. On the right side of your screen there, you'll see a big crusty thing. I'm not sure, it looks sort of like funnel cake. and that is a whole bunch of plants that have been covered with ice spray. And it's just amazing to see, especially when they are glimmering in the sunlight. So another thing people do in the park is cross-country skiing. We have a 31-mile long trail called the McDade Trail, and that's a very popular place to go cross-country skiing. Excellent exercise, I know from experience. And another thing people do, even at this time of year, believe it or not, is fishing. The water, it can get very cold here, but as long as you're wearing some decent clothes and some decent waders, you can go out there and get some fish. The river is one of the most iconic things in the park. Everyone loves the river. It's very, very beautiful, and it's a great place to fish. There are over 66 species of fish that have been found in our park. So that's a huge thing. And the river is the longest undammed river east of the Mississippi River. Pretty darn cool, and a great place to recreate. So those are things that we do today in 2023. But if it was 100 years ago, you'd be doing something different in this part of the world. There are a number of villages that are here that were functioning towns before it was a park. One of those places is called Millbrook Village. There it is. It's in the middle of the park. And Millbrook Village is a historic village. There are a lot of preserved buildings there. Many of them are not original. Some of them were brought in from other places to create an area that is emblematic of what it was like to live on a rural farm town in the 1800s. And here's one of those buildings that I was talking about. This is one of the original ones. This is called the Garris House. It was founded by a man named Abram Garris, and he also started a mill. And this is a recreation of the mill. It's not the original one, but in this mill, they grinded grain through water power. There's a creek right next to the mill, which helped to grind all that grain for various purposes. So at this time of year, you'd also be preparing for religious services. This park still has a church. It is not a functioning church, but they do still have ceremonies there occasionally. But if you were a kid or an adult at this time, you'd probably be doing a lot of work. People had to make their own things. You couldn't just go to Walmart and buy things. You had to make your own things. And one of those things was clothing, and which is very important at this time of year because it gets so cold. So you might be using a spinning wheel to take sheep wool to make yarn. But you can't just do anything with yarn. You also have to put it together into a piece of clothing, and that would be done by weaving, using a weaving loom. And you could make some pretty amazing, very warm clothing with a weaving loom. Now, at this time of year, it might be helpful to do an activity that is warm. And one of those things that you could do is blacksmithing, making things with metal. Taking metal, making it very, very, very hot through fire and coal, and shaping it into various things. And one of those things is, you're probably familiar with these guys. These are horses were what people rode on before there were automobiles. And horses, of course, need to wear shoes. So blacksmiths would make shoes, horseshoes. Another thing that you might do, maybe you get thirsty, you could make some apple cider. And this is an actual cider press that was used during that time. Put a bunch of apples in there, squish them with the press, and some wonderful apple cider comes out the bottom of it. Very tasty. And then another thing, if you might be fortunate to do if you are in the middle of December or January, is making candles. Candles are obviously necessary for making light. And but the process of making a candle using hot wax requires a lot of heat. So this was a good thing to do if you wanted to stay warm in the middle of the winter and also get some things done. So light is, I think, the key to our holiday season. I wish all of you to have light, even when things are dark and not very good. But I want everyone to be thankful for what we have, all of our wonderful parks that we have in our country.